She mattered. We saw her. You should have too. That was the sentence that unraveled everything. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't posted online or thrown across some trending thread. It was said softly by a junior staffer in a boardroom built for power. And for the first time, someone like Calden Vey didn't know how to respond. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let's go back to the silence before the storm. Naraya Lane wasn't the kind of woman who turned heads in an office hallway. She didn't wear the red-bottom heels. Her suits weren't tailored. She didn't lead with volume or charm. But she showed up. She did her job. And she made sure every single person who passed her desk felt human. That was her power. And yet, the day she got fired, no one said a word. Have you ever known someone who made work feel like more than deadlines and deliverables? The kind of person who quietly solved problems before they became chaos? The kind that asked how you were and meant it? Naraya was that person. But people like her don't end up on billboards. They don't get recognition in quarterly reports. They're the glue. And when glue is gone, most don't notice, until everything starts falling apart. Calden Vey didn't fire her because she failed. He fired her because her department didn't scale. It didn't produce direct profit. It didn't impress shareholders. He didn't look at her when he did it, just at her numbers. Your division will be merged under PR, he said, sliding the folder across the table. Thank you for your work. Then he turned to his assistant and asked who was next on the agenda. But here's what Calden didn't know. Naraya had changed more lives in 3 years than most of his board ever would. And she didn't need to protest, because 20 quiet voices were already preparing to remind him. Veycorp's headquarters was a 30-floor glass sculpture in downtown Charlotte. Sharp edges, blue-tinted windows, modern everything. But inside that pristine structure were people with real stories. Some working 2 jobs, some raising kids, some barely holding it together. And somehow, they all ended up talking to Naraya, not because she was nosy, but because she always had time. She ran community affairs, one of the lowest-funded departments in the company. 10 employees, dozens of city partners, 0 fanfare. They didn't make the company richer, but they made it human. They funded free tech classes at the public library, helped homeless shelters digitize their records, sent used monitors to under-resourced schools, and no one on the 30th floor ever noticed, except maybe once a quarter, when she was invited to sit at the big table and share a 5-minute summary of her team's impact. 31. No spouse, no kids, no social media to show off her life. But ask anyone in the building, and they'd tell you she had the biggest heart in the company. Maya in IT got her first promotion because Naraya helped reframe her work into language executives understood. Saul in the mailroom kept working after losing his brother because Naraya made sure he had rides home every night. Dina, an unpaid intern, almost quit school, but Naraya found a local non-profit willing to sponsor her rent for 6 months. And Naraya never mentioned these things. She just did them. Calden Vey, 36, CEO by inheritance and merit. A man who read market trends like love letters and treated projections like promises. He wasn't cruel. He was clean, focused, calculated. Everything about him was curated. His suits, his boardroom tone, his weekend appearances at investor brunches. His father built Veycorp from a southern family shipping company into a tech property empire. Calden took it digital, made it global. And now, everything had to scale. Every division had to deliver. That day, the boardroom was full. Quarterly review. Marketing spoke first. Legal gave updates. Product leads pitched innovation ideas. Then it was Naraya's turn. She walked in with a grey binder and quiet shoulders, wore soft flats and a deep blue blouse. She smiled at no one in particular, and she spoke clearly. In the last quarter, we've completed 8 local partnerships, directly supported 1,300 families, trained over 400 single parents in basic tech literacy, and launched a mobile literacy hub for underserved areas. She didn't oversell it. She didn't dramatize. She simply told the truth. Calden barely looked at her. He tapped his pen, checked the slide behind her, leaned back. "Your department's spend has increased 11% year over year," he said. "We're reallocating. Community affairs will be absorbed under public relations." He slid a manila folder across the table. "Thank you for your work." No one else spoke. Nerea blinked once, nodded, picked up her binder, left the room, and the silence she left behind was heavier than anyone expected. She rode the elevator down to the parking garage alone. 15 floors. No one joined her. She didn't cry. Not until she reached her car. Not until she turned off the ignition and sat in the quiet. It wasn't the job. It was the way it ended. Like she had never mattered. Maya saw Nerea leave early. She knew something was off. 10 minutes later, she sent an email. "I just want to say this out loud. Nerea changed my career path. She made this place feel like more than code and reports. If she's gone, something is wrong." She didn't send it to HR. She sent it to the board. By the end of the day, 19 more employees followed. They didn't chant in the hallway. They didn't storm social media. They didn't quit. They simply told the truth. She helped me find housing. She kept me from quitting. She was the only person who saw me. 20 voices, 1 woman. No title could ever define her impact. And the board started listening. Because when 20 people in different departments speak up without being asked, someone usually pays attention. Except Calden. He hadn't heard a word yet. But he was about to. Nerea had walked into that boardroom with everything she needed, except power. She carried a grey binder, simple. No assistant. No digital deck. Just printouts, annotated by hand. That's how she preferred to track outcomes, where she could feel what mattered. She stood last on the agenda. They always placed her last, like her department was an afterthought. To her right, marketing, designer heels, perfect slides, ROI graphs with bold colors. To her left, product strategy, fast talkers, big terms, projections that aimed for outer space. And in the center, Calden Vey, unreadable, elegant, cold. She nodded when called, stood slowly, took a breath. "Good afternoon," she began. "I'll keep this brief. We wrapped 3 multi-neighborhood partnerships this quarter, distributing over 200 laptops. We trained 420 single mothers in basic tech skills, most of whom went on to get job placement assistance. We also refurbished a warehouse into a weekend literacy hub for underserved high school students." She passed around a 3-page summary, neatly printed. No fluff. "We worked under budget by 2.8%. We increased direct service impact by 11%. And our public sentiment report sits at 87% approval in the metro region." No applause. No smiles. Just blinking. Marketing cleared her throat as if to hurry things along. Legal scrolled through their phone. "And Calden?" He tapped his pen. Slowly, precisely. "You used the term impact. But how does that translate into revenue alignment?" he asked. Nerea blinked once. "It aligns with corporate image resilience. We've been recognized by 3 community news outlets this month. Our programs anchor public trust in VayCorp during market volatility. The long-term brand equity we build helps all verticals hold ground, even when quarterly targets dip." A pause. Calden leaned back, eyes unmoved. Then he said it. Flat, precise, final. "Your department is no longer essential." Maya, from product, looked up. One of the interns audibly gasped, quickly silenced by a look from HR. "We're folding community affairs under corporate PR. The operational overhead is no longer justified. Thank you for your work." He slid a manila folder down the polished table. It stopped in front of Nerea with a soft thud. Inside, her termination memo. No conversation, no review, no room for grace. She looked down at it, then up at the people around her. Not a single person met her eyes. She nodded once. tucked the folder under her arm. "Thank you for the opportunity." Her voice didn't crack. She walked out. Quiet, straight-backed, dignified. The room didn't speak for 5 whole seconds, and in corporate time, that was an eternity. She pressed the L button. Alone. The chrome reflected her calm, but her heart pounded. This wasn't a firing. It was a dismissal of her entire purpose. She had bent over backward to make miracles with no budget. She built trust in neighborhoods others ignored, and it took Calden 3 sentences to erase all of it. She didn't curse him. She just clenched the folder tighter as the elevator dropped floor by floor. The walls were soft cream, a plant on the desk, handwritten notes pinned above the monitor, reminders from families, interns, volunteers. "Thank you for helping me get back into school. You taught me how to believe again. My son got hired after the class. Thank you." She looked at each one for a long second. Then she started to pack. Notebook, keys, small framed quote, "Lead quietly, love loudly." She placed it face down in the box. As she rolled the box out of the office, a few heads turned. No one said anything. Maya saw her and stood up. But Naraya gave a small smile, a tiny nod. "It's okay." It wasn't, but it would be. She sat in her car for a long while, didn't turn the key, didn't cry right away. The air was too still. Her mind kept replaying the line, "Your department is no longer essential." She thought of Maya, of Saul, the mail guy, of Dina, of her 10-person team who gave up weekends and holidays to make real change. What would they think? What would they do? Would they be angry? Would they forget? She exhaled deeply, the breath hitching once before the tears came. Quiet, hot, one hand on the steering wheel, one over her mouth. She didn't scream. She didn't break. She wept like someone who had given the best of themselves to a world that barely noticed. On the second floor, through a narrow strip of glass in the stairwell, Maya saw her. Not everything, but enough. She didn't take a picture. She didn't post it. She wrote an email and sent it. The office buzzed like normal. Marketing prepped next week's campaign deck. Product finalized a pitch. But then something strange started happening. One person opened the all-employees directory, then another, then another. In 10 minutes, 20 separate messages were typed. Different senders, different floors, but all addressed to the same people, the executive board. Maya, I wouldn't be here without Naraya Lane. She saw things in people others ignored. I'm writing to say, what happened today felt wrong. I can't stay silent. Dina, the former intern. When my scholarship fell through, Naraya found me a place to live. She didn't owe me anything, but she changed my entire trajectory. You need to know who you just pushed out. Saul, mail services. I almost quit last year. My brother died, and no one noticed. Except her. She walked me to my car and waited for me to calm down. She's not replaceable. Elliot, security. She called me by name when no one else did. That matters. You should think about that. Naraya mattered. Even if the CEO didn't see it, everyone else did. The wave had started, and by the next morning, the board couldn't ignore it. Not because it went viral, but because it came from the inside, from voices that had never spoken up before. All for one woman who never asked for attention, only gave. His assistant walked in, holding a tablet. Sir, you might want to see this later. It's 20 employee memos, sent to the board. He looked up. Brow tightened. What are they about? About Naraya Lane. What about her? They said, you made a mistake. He stared at the screen, unmoving, then said quietly, leave it. She placed the tablet on his desk and walked out. For the first time in a long time, he didn't return to his meeting. He picked up the tablet and began to read. Naraya didn't remember walking through the lobby. She must have. She'd ridden that elevator from the 30th floor to the ground floor 100 times before. The space was always sleek. White marble floors, soft lighting, modern art on the walls. But today she didn't see any of it. Her arms tightened around the cardboard box she carried, filled with the quiet pieces of her work life. An old office mug, a framed quote from a mentee, her notebook of partnership plans, and the folder Calden had handed her. The same folder that ended it all. Her heels didn't click. She wore flats, soft grey ones with a fading sole. 2 interns looked up as she passed reception. They didn't smile, didn't wave. One turned quickly to their phone. The other lowered their head. Not one goodbye. Not one person brave enough to ask, what happened? Because they all knew. They'd seen this before. When someone gets dismissed like that, quietly with no explanation, it's like the air shifts. Everyone pretends not to notice because they don't want to be next. But Maya noticed. Maya had seen the way Naraya's shoulders tightened as she passed the coffee station. She watched from behind a partition as Naraya hit the elevator button with her elbow, her hands too full to be free. And when the elevator doors closed, Maya sat still, for a long minute, thinking. In the parking garage, Naraya's car was in the same spot it always was, level 2B, 2nd row, 4th space from the ramp. She popped the trunk, slowly. The soft sound of the hydraulics lifting reminded her of how many times she'd stood here late at night after events, hauling leftover supplies, leftover flyers, leftover food to drop off at shelters before she went home. She placed the box down gently, then sat in the driver's seat, shut the door, and folded her hands on the wheel. For the first time in a long time, the quiet around her felt like it was pressing in, like she couldn't breathe. The garage lights buzzed above. Her windshield caught a reflection of someone walking up the ramp, but she didn't turn. She didn't want to be seen. Tears slipped down without warning. No sobbing, no shaking, just silent, steady grief, not for the job, but for the way it ended. No questions, no conversation. 3 years of showing up, giving more than she had to, spending weekends at food banks, coaching interns no one else mentored, writing proposals after hours to keep small projects alive. None of it mattered, because one man with a clean suit and clean numbers decided she didn't fit the budget anymore. That's what hurt. Not the ending, but the erasure. On the 2nd floor of the garage, behind a slatted wall of steel, someone stood still. Maya. She wasn't spying. She'd walked down to her car and froze when she saw Naraya through the windshield, head bowed, hand over her mouth, trying to gather herself. Maya didn't move, didn't interrupt, but her chest burned. The next morning, she would send the email, and she wouldn't be alone. But for now, all she could do was bear witness. Naraya wiped her cheeks with her sleeve, turned the key, and started the engine. The hum of the car broke the stillness. She reversed slowly, backed out, and drove up the ramp toward daylight. She didn't look back. That evening, she sat at her small kitchen table in her apartment. The same binder she'd brought into the boardroom lay open beside her. Its pages were filled with stories no one had heard. Kids who'd never touched a keyboard learning to code. A grandmother who got a job for the first time because she learned to apply online. A neighborhood that started a Saturday tech club with only 6 donated tablets, all erased by one sentence. This department is no longer essential. She stared at those words written in the termination letter, printed in perfect font. She thought of crossing them out, burning the paper, but instead, she folded it up, slid it into the back of the binder and closed the cover. She would keep it, not as a wound, but as proof of what they couldn't take from her. The next morning, her phone lit up with a message from Saul in the mailroom. They told me what happened. You didn't deserve that. Just wanted you to know. I still talk about that night you waited in the cold with me. You were the only one who stayed. Then another. Naraya, it's Dina. I'm sorry I didn't speak up. I didn't know what to say. But I'm writing to the board today. You're the reason I finished my program. I'll never forget that. Naraya blinked at her screen. 23 messages by noon. Some from interns she'd mentored. Some from admin staff. Some from people she didn't even remember helping. Each one a thread. And together, they began to weave something she never expected. A net strong enough to catch her when the floor fell out. Up on the 30th floor, Calden's office sat in its usual stillness. Glass windows, white desk, digital displays. He read through numbers like scripture. But when his assistant slid the tablet onto his desk, he looked up. 20 employees, she said quietly. All of them speaking up for the same person. Calden didn't respond at first. He tapped the screen, scanned the subject lines. Each one included her name. Each one called his decision into question. He leaned back in his chair, pressed his fingers together. "Who sent the first?" he asked. "Maya, from product." "Yes, sir." He looked toward the window. "Get me her file." "Naraya's?" "Yes." Everything. In that moment, for the first time, Calden Vey wondered if he had made a mistake. And that was the first crack, because cracks, when left alone, don't disappear. They grow, they spread, and eventually, even the coldest structures collapse from the inside. Maya stared at her screen for a long time before typing a single word. She wasn't someone who stepped into messes. She'd been at Vaycorp for 4 years and had survived 2 rounds of layoffs by keeping her head down, doing clean work, and staying out of executive conversations. But something about the way Neriya left, silent, small, brushed aside, kept replaying in her mind like an alarm. No anger, no fight, just grace and pain. Maya remembered the day her own transfer request had been denied. Neriya was the one who helped her reframe her skills and walked her through how to present her case again, successfully. No one else did that. Neriya had watched people closely. She remembered birthdays. She remembered allergies. She remembered when someone's sibling was sick or when an employee had walked in late 2 days in a row and hadn't spoken up because she didn't want to cry in the break room. And Vaycorp let her go like she was a glitch in the system. So Maya opened a blank email. Subject, Neriya Lane. She started typing. Slowly. "I know I'm not in leadership, and I know this probably won't change anything, but I just need to say, what happened yesterday felt wrong. Neriya helped me stay at this company. She didn't have to. She just did. She has done more for morale and employee loyalty than any PR campaign we've launched. If she's gone, then I think something important is missing." She paused, reread, then hit send. Not to HR, not to her direct supervisor. She sent it to the board's executive distribution list. Then she shut her laptop and walked to the vending machine like nothing had happened. An hour later, Saul from Mail Services walked into his tiny sorting room and saw the inbox on his office desktop blinking. It was a message from Maya. She'd CC'd a few people. He read her words slowly twice and felt his throat tighten. No one ever asked for his opinion in this company, but Neriya did. She'd stand by the loading dock with him sometimes, waiting for volunteer shipments, asking him about his grandkids and whether he liked the new mail cart upgrades. Last Christmas, she gave him a signed thank you card and a pair of insulated gloves, because she'd noticed the skin on his hands was cracking from carrying packages. He clicked reply all without even thinking. "I agree with Maya. When my brother passed, Neriya was the only person who noticed I wasn't okay. She didn't make a big deal. She just stood by me for 10 minutes until I stopped shaking. She gave dignity to people like me. That's not replaceable." He hit send and went back to sorting documents. By 2:30 p.m., 6 more employees had sent their own messages. Dina, the former intern now hired part-time in compliance, kept it short. "Neriya found me a place to stay when I lost my housing. No manager knew. She never bragged. She just quietly changed my life." Eliza in events added, "Every time something went wrong with a venue or partner, Neriya stepped in and solved it without making it anyone else's problem. She was the human backbone of this place." Jeremiah in tech support simply wrote, "I don't say much, but I want it noted. She's the only executive who ever spoke to me like I mattered. I trusted her. I still do." Upstairs, in a sleek, enclosed office 3 floors below the boardroom, one of the directors leaned back in his chair and read through the chain. He didn't forward it. He printed it. He set it in front of the other directors that afternoon and said, "This doesn't happen. Not unless it means something." The messages kept coming. Some were long and full of detail. Others were just a few raw lines, like this one from Tina in facilities. "I watched her clean the office microwave once when someone made a mess and walked away." That told me everything I needed to know. By the end of the workday, 20 emails had arrived. Some from people who had no interaction with her department. Others from people who barely ever spoke in meetings. No one was organizing this. There was no Slack group, no protest thread. It was quiet, organic, and it was spreading. In Calden's office, the assistant to the CEO paced once before walking in. He was on a call with one of the VPs. She paused. Waited. He didn't notice. She finally interrupted softly. "Sir, this needs your eyes." He lifted his gaze, a touch annoyed. She handed him the printed pages. Nothing highlighted, nothing circled. Just 20 statements. No signature block, no legal risk warnings, just heart. Calden dismissed the call, placed the papers on his desk, and read the first one, then the second, then the third. His jaw tightened. Calden wasn't easily rattled. He'd fired regional directors before, downsized entire branches, cut off partnerships worth millions with one phone call. But this wasn't financial. This was a crack in the culture he believed he had mastered. Nerea Lane hadn't thrown a fit. She hadn't leaked a story or filed a suit. She'd walked out silently. And that silence had spoken louder than any press release. He buzzed his assistant. "Bring me her file." She nodded and returned 5 minutes later with a slim manila folder and a red binder. "Her HR file and last 3 reports," she said. He opened the file first. A clean record. No complaints. Strong evaluations. Then the binder. Inside were impact breakdowns, handwritten notes, field photos from their outreach events, feedback from partner organizations. He stared at a comment clipped to one of the printouts. "We've never had a corporate partner stay through cleanup." Nerea stayed. She even helped repaint our walls. He flipped to another. "If this program gets cut, we lose 70% of our adult literacy turnout." Another. "She promised to come back, and she did." Calden leaned back, hands clasped behind his head. The weight of it pressed into his chest. He didn't call her, didn't email. He needed to think, to figure out what he'd missed. Because he'd always believed in clean decisions, sharp cuts, objective data. But 20 employees had told him something numbers never would. She mattered. By the next morning, the executive boardroom didn't feel like a space of control anymore. There was a tension in the air, tight, quiet, undeniable. 7 board members sat in high-backed leather chairs. Their eyes weren't on presentations. Not this time. They were flipping through a printed packet. No glossy reports, no Q4 metrics. Just 20 raw, unfiltered employee messages compiled into one stapled document. No one spoke for a while. Then, Director Monroe, the longest-serving board member, placed the packet flat on the table. "We've had terminations before, but nothing like this." Someone shifted in their chair. "These aren't complaints," she continued. "They're tributes to someone we let go." Another added quietly. "No, to someone he let go," Monroe corrected. "Calden did this. He made the cut without consultation." "Community affairs doesn't drive revenue," the CFO muttered. "Neither does integrity," Monroe snapped. "But try running this company without it." There was silence again. One of the junior board members finally spoke. He looked about 30, younger than most in the room. "What do we do?" he asked. Monroe tapped her pen. "Slowly. We start with a review, not of her, of him." Later that day, a quiet memo was sent to Calden's office. Subject: Board review requested. Employee feedback Lane and L. He read it once, leaned back in his chair and sighed. He wasn't used to being questioned, but 20 names carried weight. He didn't respond. He simply asked his assistant to cancel the next 2 meetings. Then he sat in silence. For hours. Meanwhile, in facilities, Tina got a response to her email. It was from one of the board members. Just one sentence. "Thank you for sharing what leadership never sees." She stared at the screen, heart pounding. No one had ever thanked her like that. At the same time, across the building, in the break room on floor 12, employees passed each other with longer looks. Nothing loud, just nods, soft smiles, like they were part of something unspoken. The hallway felt different now, not safer, not fixed, but seen. Because when the invisible woman got noticed, it made everyone else feel just a little more human. In her apartment, Naria didn't know any of this was happening yet. She was cleaning out old files, making a list of places she could volunteer full-time until she found stable work. She hadn't checked her email in 2 days. She didn't want to know what Vacorp had decided. She wasn't interested in fighting to return to a place that discarded her. But still, her heart beat harder whenever she passed her phone. She was trying to move on, trying. That evening, Monroe made a call. She didn't dial Calden. She dialed Naria. It went to voicemail. Her voice was calm but firm. "Miss Lane, this is Director Monroe from Vacorp's board. I'd like to speak with you, not as an executive, but as a woman who believes quiet leadership deserves real respect. Call me if you're open to talking." She left her number. Then she stared at her ceiling for a long time, thinking about her own early days, when she too was a woman in flats, quietly working twice as hard as the men who barely noticed. Naria reminded her of a younger version of herself, only steadier. Calden, on the other hand, didn't sleep well that night. He lay in bed with his eyes open. He didn't think about the emails anymore. He thought about the one time he walked past her office and saw her laughing with a woman. In a wheelchair, the woman had brought in homemade cookies for the team Naria managed. He hadn't paused then. He hadn't asked. He wondered what they were laughing about. He couldn't remember if he even looked up from his phone. The next morning, Monroe gathered the board again. "I spoke to her," she said. "And?" She didn't answer. "Not yet. Will she?" someone asked. "She's not the type to chase anything," Monroe replied. "She doesn't need to. Her work speaks louder than any pitch we've ever paid for." They all looked at each other. "So what do we do?" someone asked again. "We tell her the truth," Monroe said, "which is that we were wrong. And if she's willing, we'd like to fix that." By noon, Naria finally checked her voicemail. She sat on her couch, listening to Monroe's message with wide eyes. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she stared at her ceiling and whispered, "Now you see me." Upstairs, in the corner office, Calden was still reading Naria's file. There was a photo tucked behind the last page, a picture of her standing beside 5 teenagers at the community literacy event. She wasn't posing. She was watching a young girl show her how to type something on a screen. Her eyes were focused, soft, like she cared. No, not like. She did care. And he hadn't. Not until it was too late. He opened his phone and typed one word into a new contact search. Naria. Nothing saved. He didn't even have her number. That fact alone said everything. He picked up his coat and told his assistant, "Cancel everything for the next hour." "Where are you going?" she asked. "To apologize," he said. "By email?" In person. The elevator doors opened on level 3 of the parking structure, and Calden stepped out, scanning the rows. His driver watched from a distance but didn't follow. Calden wasn't sure why he felt the need to come here himself. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was control. But he couldn't explain the pull any more than he could explain the way her voice still lingered in his. Ears, measured, calm, unbothered, even as he slid her termination folder across the boardroom table. He spotted her car. The same grey sedan she parked in the same spot every day, empty now. But seeing it parked there before, so consistently, had been one of the few constants in this building. And now, it was gone. He exhaled slowly, unsure what he'd expected. Closure? Forgiveness? Calden didn't know what he was doing. He wasn't used to remorse. He was used to being right. He turned and walked back toward the elevator, But something in him wasn't satisfied. He needed to see her. Not to fix anything, just to face the consequence of his blindness. Back upstairs, Calden entered his office and closed the door behind him. The lights were too bright, the silence too loud. He didn't sit. He paced, thought, let pieces connect in his head that he'd ignored for far too long. He remembered the employee gala last spring, how Neria had stood by the dessert table most of the evening, chatting with the event crew and custodial staff. She wasn't trying to climb. She wasn't trying to be seen, but she was, by everyone but him. His father used to say, if they're not at the table, they don't matter. Calden had believed that. But Neria wasn't just part of the table. She was the reason some people even stayed in the room. He sat at his desk, pulled out her binder again, and began rereading every handwritten margin note she'd left in the community reports. Talk to food pantry about weekend hours. Find sponsor for single mothers class transportation. Include non-verbal learners in digital curriculum. None of it was for show. She had no audience, no camera. She was simply building something, quietly. And he'd cut her off mid-sentence. The assistant buzzed in. Sir, Board Director Monroe is on line 1. He picked up. Yes. Calden. Her voice was sharp. This isn't a request. We need to meet. Today, I'm aware, he said, keeping his voice even. I've been reading the emails. Good. Because she hasn't responded to my voicemail. She won't. Why not? Because we never gave her a reason to believe we'd ever listen. There was silence. Then Monroe said quietly, find her. Before we lose her forever. He didn't reply, but he knew she was right. That evening, he sat at home, lights dim, untouched glass of bourbon on the table. His phone buzzed once. A text from Maya. Yes, Maya from Product. He didn't even know she had his number. She's at Central Brew most evenings. Corner table. Laptop open. You should say something. But only if you mean it. He read the message 3 times, then stood up and grabbed his keys. The cafe was quiet when he arrived. Small, local, cozy. Not the kind of place he ever frequented, but there she was, Neria. In the far corner, lit by a gold-hued lamp, hair pulled back, laptop open, tea beside her. She looked, okay, not defeated, not angry. She looked like herself, and something about that steadiness hit him harder than he expected. He approached slowly. She looked up before he even said anything. And she smiled. A small, knowing smile. I figured you'd find me, she said softly. He stopped, surprised. You knew. You're not the type to let your name get dragged by 20 people without checking the damage. He gave a tight breath of a laugh. Is that what I'm doing? Damage control? Isn't it? She asked. He shook his head. No, not this time. She motioned to the empty seat across from her. Then sit. He did. They sat in silence for a moment. Then, she closed her laptop, tea still steaming beside her. So, she said, was it about the department or me? He looked her straight in the eyes. Both. She didn't flinch, didn't gloat. I figured you shouldn't have had to. Calden, she said gently, I don't want an apology that's meant to restore a title. I want to know if you finally understand why it mattered. I do. Why? Because everything you did quietly, he said, was louder than any campaign we've ever launched. You never listened before. I didn't know how, he admitted. She tilted her head. And now? I'm trying to. He watched her for a beat longer. Her eyes were calm, not cold. Her presence hadn't shrunk, even after being cut out. In fact, she looked freer now. The board wants you back, he said finally. But I told them you probably wouldn't respond. You're not interested in status or proving anything. I'm not, she said. I just wanted to matter. You did, he said. You do. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out an envelope. It's not a contract, he said, placing it gently on the table. It's a letter. From me, no titles, just truth. She didn't open it. She placed her palm over it, then met his eyes. Then thank you. She stood, I have a dinner to make, she said, gathering her laptop and mug. Can I walk you to your car? No, she smiled. But you can walk with me. They stepped out into the night. The cold air didn't bother either of them. For the first time, Calden walked beside her. Not ahead, not behind. Beside. Calden didn't go back to the office right away. After walking Naraya to her car that night, he returned to his townhouse in Dilworth, kicked off his shoes, and sat in silence with her letter still echoing in his mind. She hadn't raised her voice once. She hadn't asked for anything. She didn't even open the envelope. She just listened, stood firm, left on her own time, and that shook him more than any outburst would have. Calden had always been trained to recognize power in the loudest person in the room, the one who negotiated, demanded, took space. But Naraya had done the opposite. She'd been calm, solid, entirely unshaken by his presence. She didn't need to fight for her worth, because 20 people had already done that for her. At 2 a.m., he turned on the floor lamp in his home office and pulled out the folder again, the one he'd received from HR days after her dismissal. He had skimmed it once. Now he read every word. 3 years of quarterly reviews, all exceptional. Multiple community award recognitions. 2 partnership expansion proposals, approved by external boards but blocked internally for budget reasons. Dozens of emails from non-profit leaders praising her for showing up in person, staying after events, knowing people by name. Each report was detailed, clear, and handwritten with notes like, discuss partnership overlap with Eastside Resource Center, they lost funding. Request pantry restock deadline extension, weather delayed delivery. Confirm Maya's presentation draft for intern showcase. She deserves the spotlight. Maya. The same Maya who started the email thread that reached the board. Calden leaned back in his chair and exhaled. He'd missed it all. 3 months earlier, he had denied Naraya's request for an additional staff hire. He hadn't even read the justification form, just skimmed the salary expectation and rejected it for budget alignment. That person would have helped her double the outreach. He'd cut her off without understanding the cost. Not just financial, human. He reached the final page of her performance file. Clipped to the back was a yellow sticky note. Faded ink. Hand-delivered this to Calden's assistant. If you read this, thank you. If you don't, I still believe in what I built. It was Naraya's handwriting. He stared at it for a long time. Then he stood, crossed the room, and opened the sliding glass door to his balcony. Charlotte's skyline was quiet at that hour, lights glowing in windows of buildings he once thought he understood. But for the first time, he realized leadership wasn't just decision-making. It was seeing people, and Naraya had been invisible to him, until everyone else refused to let her fade. The next morning, he arrived at Vaycorp earlier than usual. Security nodded. Staff cleared paths. But he didn't go to his office. He went to the 10th floor, the floor Naraya's department used to occupy. The space was still empty. Boxes were still stacked near the copier. No one had cleaned out her desk. Her framed quote was gone, but the corkboard remained, with a small note tacked in the corner. Don't wait to be seen. Make impact anyway. He stood in the center of the room, alone, letting the air settle. This was what she'd built, and he'd bulldozed it with a signature. Back upstairs, he called a meeting with HR and the board's internal liaison. Reinstate community affairs, he said plainly. We already approved a PR merger. Undo it. Do you have a candidate for leadership? Yes, Calden replied. Naraya Lane. Title, Vice President of Impact Strategy, full department autonomy, budget discretion. Report directly to me. The room fell silent. You're serious? I've never been more. By mid-afternoon, he was waiting in her office. Not hers anymore, technically, but it would be. He stood near the window, envelope in hand. When she stepped in, he didn't speak first. She did. This is different, she said softly, looking around. It should have always looked like this, he replied. She walked to the desk slowly. Is this your way of making it up to me? No, he said. It's my way of saying, If you want to keep building, I'll get out of your way this time. She looked at him. Long. Then down at the desk, her desk. She ran her fingers across the wood surface. Still smooth. Still familiar. Do I have to sign anything? No. Not today. He handed her the envelope. It's still just a letter. She placed it in her tote bag. I'll read it tonight. Thank you. She turned to him. You know this doesn't fix what happened. I know. He nodded. But I'm not here to fix it. I'm here to honor it. She took one breath. Then another. Okay, she said. And just like that, she sat, back in her chair, but taller than before. Naraya didn't say yes immediately. The office was hers again, the chair familiar, the view unchanged. But she didn't sit there as a woman returning to what she'd lost. She sat as a woman who knew what she was worth, with or without a title. The desk was clean. Her old notebooks, once boxed away, now sat stacked neatly in the corner. But she hadn't unpacked yet. Instead, she spent her first few days watching, listening, walking around. She spoke to the janitors first, the interns, the admin staff who worked behind the scenes. She wasn't trying to prove a point. She was just doing what she'd always done, acknowledging people others overlooked. Calden passed her in the hallway once. She nodded, nothing more. She didn't owe him a performance. She wasn't trying to impress anyone, because she wasn't waiting for the company to make her work feel valid again. She'd never stopped building, even after they let her go. That weekend, Naraya returned to the South Commons Library. The literacy hub she helped launch was still running, a little smaller without corporate support, but still going. When she walked in, a teenage boy in a hoodie lit up. Miss Lane, I didn't know you were coming today. Didn't plan to, she smiled, pulling off her coat. But I had a free morning. He handed her a clipboard. We're low on tablets. One's glitching. I'll take a look. She sat beside him, opened the settings, and started troubleshooting. Just like before. An hour in, a volunteer coordinator pulled her aside. We heard you're back at Vaycorp. Technically, she said. But I'm still here. They really rehired you. Reinstated. Promoted. Budget increase. Direct report to the top. Wow. Yeah. How does it feel? Naraya paused. She looked around. 2 children were learning how to type. A mother was filling out a job application on a refurbished laptop. A grandmother was reading a basic HTML manual out loud, proudly. It feels irrelevant, she answered. What do you mean? The title, the office. None of that built this. She touched the edge of a worn table. This is what matters. That evening, Calden called. She didn't answer. He didn't call again. Instead, he sent a short text. I don't want to interrupt your rhythm. Just checking if there's anything you need. She stared at it for a while, then replied, Let me do my work. That's all I need. He didn't argue, didn't push. He was starting to understand. By Monday, she submitted her first revised strategy memo. The board opened it expecting numbers. What they got was a map. Partnerships she intended to reforge. 3 pilot programs to launch in underfunded districts. A new internal mentorship system pairing senior staff with interns from overlooked backgrounds. Mental health initiatives tied to service hours. A digital upskill course that would partner with public libraries statewide. At the bottom of the proposal, she had written one sentence. If the impact we seek isn't visible in people's lives, it isn't impact. It's branding. No one argued. They approved every line. Meanwhile, Maya passed her in the hallway. Naraya smiled. Still here? She asked. Wouldn't be if you hadn't said something, Naraya replied. Maya shook her head. You don't owe me thanks. It's not thanks, it's recognition. For what? For being someone who saw something wrong and didn't stay quiet. Maya swallowed once, then nodded. They didn't say more, didn't need to. Dina messaged her that night, a selfie from her new apartment. Your recommendation helped me get approved. I finally have a lease in my name. Thank you. Naraya smiled, replied with a simple, proud of you. then closed her laptop. But a good tired, a tired that comes from doing something that matters. She made a cup of tea, lit a candle, sat on her couch with a book she hadn't finished yet, then reached into her bag and pulled out the envelope. Calden's letter. She unfolded it. It was handwritten. No logo, no executive tone, just ink and reflection. I used to think leadership was about control, that silence meant compliance, that no complaints meant approval. But you showed me the opposite. You lost your title, but gained something I'll never forget. The people you touched rose up. And, in doing so, they held up a mirror to me. I didn't like what I saw, but I needed to see it. If you come back as you are. Not the version we ignored, not the one we expect. Come back as Naraya Lane, because that's who we need. She folded it again, set it on the coffee table. She didn't cry, didn't sigh. She just sat there in quiet understanding. She was already back, and she had never needed permission to be who she was. It wasn't part of a plan. Calden didn't set meetings in cafes. He didn't wait around for moments to happen. But 3 days after Naraya returned, he found himself slowing his pace as he walked past Central Brew on 7th Street. It was late morning. The street buzzed with life, people on laptops, soft jazz humming from outdoor speakers, a pair of teens arguing over muffins. And there she was, Naraya, in the corner seat, same table. One earbud in, head tilted as she read from her laptop, a half-empty chai on her right. Her left hand resting lightly on the table, index finger tapping along to whatever rhythm only she could hear. Calden stopped just outside the window. She didn't see him at first. He watched her blink once, sigh softly, then stretch her neck. A familiar calm washed over him, something he hadn't felt in a long time. Stillness. Without thinking, he walked inside. The chime over the door rang. She looked up, saw him, and smiled. "You again," she said softly. He didn't sit right away. "Am the first interrupting?" "That depends." "On what?" "On whether you came here as the CEO, or just a man looking for a moment." He took that in for a second, then slid into the chair across from her. Just a man. They sat in quiet for a beat. He didn't check his phone. She didn't close her laptop. She looked at him differently now, not with bitterness, not with suspicion, but with curiosity. "You ever take off the armor?" she asked. Armor. The suit, the role, the shield. He looked down at his wrist. The watch alone cost more than most monthly paychecks. He didn't answer directly. "Do you come here often?" he asked. "This is where I unwind. Alone. Always. You don't mind that?" "I prefer it." "Why?" "Because people want too much noise from you, Calden. Here, no one expects me to fix anything." He nodded slowly. "And me? What do you think I want?" "Honestly," she leaned back, "you're not used to silence. It unsettles you." He gave a small laugh. "Not defensive, not smug. Real. You're right." A waitress passed by. Naraya lifted her mug. "Want anything?" "Surprise me," he said. She ordered for him, a dark roast, black, no sugar. He raised an eyebrow. "No sweetness. You strike me as someone who needs a break from sweet things pretending to be useful." He chuckled again, deeper this time. "Are you always this honest?" "Only with people who need it." They talked, not about business, about books, music, how she learned to rebuild a pantry website with zero coding experience, how he used to play cello when he was 16, then gave it up because his father said it was soft. "Do you miss it?" she asked. "Not the sound," he said. "The feeling of not performing, just expressing. So why don't you pick it up again?" "Doesn't fit the image." "Maybe that's your real problem." He looked at her closely. "You don't talk like someone who was fired 2 weeks ago." "That's because I stopped letting your office define me the moment I walked out. That's why they followed you," he said quietly. "The 20 who wrote. You didn't ask. They just did it." She nodded. "Respect can't be managed. It's earned." Their drinks arrived. She sipped hers casually. He tasted the dark roast. Strong, bitter, clean, fitting. "I don't know who I was when I fired you," he said finally. "You were consistent," she replied. "Cold, strategic, effective. And now you're here, talking to me like I'm not an equation. Because you're not." She didn't smile at that. She just said, "Good." They lingered another hour. He didn't check the time once. Eventually she stood, sliding her laptop into her tote bag. "Thanks for the company," she said. "Want a ride?" "I like to walk." He rose, paused. "May the first walk with you." She looked him over slowly, assessing not his clothes, but his posture, his presence. Finally she nodded once. "If you can keep up." They walked 2 blocks in silence. No touching, no flirting, just steps in sync. "You know," she said, "this doesn't change everything." "I don't want to change everything," he replied. "I want to understand it." "Good, because if you're trying to earn something from me, I don't play that game. Neither do I anymore." She looked at him. "Good." When they reached the crosswalk, she stopped. "My train's that way." "Then this is where I stop." "Unless you want to ride downtown." "I don't do trains." "Then you're missing something." He smiled. She stepped closer. Not intimate, but intentional. "Calden," she said gently, "don't chase this like a solution." "What's this?" "Whatever's forming." He nodded. "Then what do I do?" "Let it breathe." She stepped onto the crosswalk, turned her head just enough, and said, "If it's real, you'll see me again." Then walked. Not away, but forward. 3 days passed before they saw each other again. He didn't text. She didn't call. But late Thursday evening, as Naraya packed up her bag, her office line buzzed. "It's Maya," her assistant said, voice curious. "Mr. Vey is downstairs." Naraya paused. "Did he say why?" "No. Just that he's here if you're open to seeing him." Naraya didn't answer right away. She looked around at her space again, her binders, her wall calendar, the fresh folder of new outreach initiatives waiting to be reviewed. She took her time, grabbed her coat, and walked to the elevator. He was in the lobby. No overcoat. No assistant. Just standing there in a grey sweater, hands in his pockets. He looked almost normal. Still sharp, but quieter. When she reached him, he straightened slightly. "You're working late," he said. "Always have. Would you let me give you a ride?" She tilted her head, skeptical but not closed. "Where are you going?" "Nowhere but wherever you're headed." She considered it for a moment, then nodded once. "Fine, but I'm not hungry, and I'm not in the mood for speeches. Neither am I." They walked out together. The cold air nipped softly, but he didn't offer his coat. She didn't expect him to. The car door opened with a soft click, and she slid in beside him. It was warm, quiet, no music, just the city outside the windows and the scent of something familiar in the air, her perfume maybe, or something that clung to her coat from the cafe. He didn't speak for the first few minutes. Neither did she. But the silence wasn't heavy. It was waiting. He glanced over once as they passed the downtown park. "You know, I'm not sure why I'm driving. Maybe because it's the only time you don't feel like you're being watched." He smirked. "That obvious? You're used to control. This doesn't require it." "What does it require?" "Presence." They pulled to a stoplight. He looked at her fully now. "You make everything sound so simple." "It is. You're just used to making it hard. And you're not. I live in the grey areas. You've only just stepped into them." He nodded slowly, accepting that. When they reached her building, he didn't park. She unbuckled her seatbelt, reached for the handle, then paused. "You planning to wait until I get inside?" "I was. You want to walk me to the door?" "If I'm allowed." She didn't answer. She opened the door and stepped out. He followed. The walk to her front step was short, less than 20 feet from curb to entry, but it felt longer somehow. The air felt different, warmer, even in the cold. She paused in front of the door and turned to him. No dramatic music, no drawn-out hesitation, just 2 people standing there, somewhere between who they were and who they might become. Thank you for the ride. Any time. You don't need to keep showing up, you know. I'm not trying to prove anything. Then what are you doing? He stepped half a pace closer. Learning how to be around someone I respect without needing to manage the moment. She studied him. You're getting better at that. I've had a good teacher. There was a pause. The kind that leaves room for a choice. She didn't move. Neither did he. But then, gently, without force, he lifted his hand and let it brush her arm. Light, slow, measured. She didn't flinch. His hand stayed there, resting just above her elbow. You're not asking, she said softly. No. That's the only reason I'm still standing here. He let go, slowly, not rejected, just respecting the moment. I'll see you tomorrow, he said. Unless I take the day off. You won't. Don't be so sure. I'm not. That's what keeps me coming back. She smiled, small, but there. Then turned the key. The door closed. He stood outside for a moment, staring at the wood grain, hand still tingling from the place where he'd touched her. And for the first time in a long time, Calden didn't feel like a man in control. He felt like a man learning how to be present. The next morning, Naraya entered her office to find a folded envelope sitting precisely at the center of her desk. No label, no seal, just cream paper and his handwriting across the top. Naraya. She didn't open it. Not yet. Instead, she hung her coat, checked her calendar, replied to 3 emails and watered. The potted plant one of the interns had dropped off last week as a thank you gift. Only after settling into her chair, with her mug of tea finally cooling beside her, did she slide the envelope toward her. No pressure, no expectation. He'd left it and walked away. That was the only reason she was opening it. Inside, the note was handwritten. Not typed. No signature block, no company logo. Just his words. There's a version of me you met the day I fired you, and another you met after 20 people reminded me who you are. I don't expect you to forget the first. I just hope you'll let me become more like the second. You didn't just do your job. You built a place where people felt like they mattered. That kind of leadership can't be taught. It has to be felt. I feel it now. I'm not asking for anything. I just wanted you to know. I see you. Finally. And I respect the space you take up. No flourish. No closing line. She folded it once. Pressed the crease. Then smiled. A slow, quiet smile. Because for once, he hadn't tried to fix what he broke with power or position. He'd simply shown up. Later that afternoon, he passed by her office while walking with a client. Their eyes met. She gave him the smallest nod, almost invisible, but he caught it. And for the rest of the day, he stood just a little straighter. That night, Naraya attended a community dinner downtown, a fundraiser for one of the libraries her team supported. She didn't wear a name tag. She didn't give a speech. She helped serve food and bus tables, just like she used to. By 9 p.m., she was outside, walking to her car with a box of leftover desserts for the Teen Tech Club. And there he was, Calden, standing by his own car across the street. You followed me? She asked, amused. No. I asked Maya if you were attending. She said yes. I came early, stayed out of the way. Why? I wanted to see where your work really lives. She didn't speak for a moment. Then, you didn't have to come. I know. But you're here. If that's not okay. I didn't say it wasn't. She opened her trunk. He stepped forward. Need help? You'll get frosting on that suit. I'll survive. He took the box from her hands carefully. Placed it beside her tote bag in the trunk. You always do this? He asked. Every time. Even before anyone was watching? Especially then. He nodded. The wind picked up slightly. She pulled her coat tighter. Let me walk you to your door, he said. She hesitated, then nodded. They didn't speak as they walked, but the silence between them no longer felt like a void. It felt full. At the entrance, she turned. I read your letter, and you didn't ask for anything. That's rare. You've already given more than I had a right to expect. I haven't given anything, she said. You've shown me who I was and who I don't want to be anymore. She tilted her head. Calden, you can't become someone new overnight. I know. And I'm not something you need to earn. I'm not trying to earn you. He paused. I'm trying to understand you, so I can learn from you. She studied him, then took one small step closer. Then stop trying to lead this. Let it grow, even if I get it wrong. Especially then. And just like that, she reached up and touched his chest, flat palm, over his heart. It wasn't romantic. It was grounding, and he understood. So he placed his hand over hers, not squeezing, just holding. No words, just that. They stood there for a long moment before she pulled away. Good night, Calden. Good night, Nariah. She stepped inside. He didn't follow, but his hand stayed warm long after she'd closed the door. It wasn't fancy. It wasn't planned. But it felt right. Nariah had finished a late meeting with the finance team, explaining why outreach impact couldn't always be quantified in quarterly figures. Her voice was steady. Her patience? Thin. By the time she returned to her office, the city was glowing in dusk light. One lamp was still on. She rubbed her temples and reached for her bag. That's when her phone buzzed. Calden. Haven't eaten. Neither have you. Walk with me? She didn't overthink it. Reply. Where? Him. Somewhere without suits or speeches. They ended up on the patio of a small bistro tucked between two brick buildings on 9th. The kind of place where no one used words like scalability or stakeholder. There was no reservation, no crowd, just two open chairs, and the scent of grilled rosemary chicken drifting from the kitchen. Nariah wore a soft turtleneck and jeans. Calden had changed into something quieter, navy sweater, slacks, no watch. They sat, ordered without looking at menus. Let the silence settle first. Do you always know where to find these places? She asked, stirring her lemonade. Only when I stop trying to impress anyone. How's that going? Work in progress. She smiled, eyes warm but not indulgent. I didn't come here to coach you. I didn't come here to be fixed. Good. Because I'm not offering anything. Even better. Because I'm not expecting it. Their food came quickly. Roasted vegetables, salmon, warm focaccia. She broke her bread slowly, dipping it in olive oil without speaking. He watched her hands, calm, steady. Same way she held a room when she spoke. Same way she had held him in place the night she touched his chest and told him not to lead this, just to let it grow. I've been thinking about that, he said. About what? What you said. That this, he gestured between them, can't be chased. You've been trained to chase things. I know. This isn't a thing. It's a rhythm. He nodded, chewing slowly. I'm learning to listen. Are you? I'm trying. Then show me. She set her fork down and leaned forward. Why did you fire me? Really? Not the boardroom reason. He didn't blink, didn't deflect. Because you didn't need me. She tilted her head. That's your answer. You were effective, respected, calm. People followed you without fanfare. That made me uncomfortable. Why? Because I didn't understand it, and I was taught to cut what I couldn't measure. She leaned back, arms crossed lightly, not defensive, but holding space. And now I see that what I couldn't measure is what made this company worth something. You're still using the word company. What should I say? Community, he exhaled. Quietly, right. Community. A candle flickered between them. No background music, just clinking forks and a few soft conversations nearby. He glanced around, then back at her. You've been honest with me from day one, because I didn't need anything from you. I need something now. What? Time. To learn how to be around you without the titles. Then stop using them. You don't even flinch when I admit that, because I already forgave you. He froze for a beat. You did? The moment I realized your power never had anything to do with me, or what I was building. Then why sit here with me? Because now, it feels like you're choosing presence over power. He reached for his glass. Paused. You scare me. She smiled. Good. Why? Because you're finally present. And that's terrifying. Yes. Because now you have to feel what other people feel. And you're not used to that. That's fair. They sat with that. Not as a confession. As truth. When the check came, she reached for it. He didn't move to stop her. Let me, she said. You always pay. This time, let me. I'll allow it. It's not a favor. Didn't think it was. She paid in cash. Simple. Clean. I like this place, she said as they walked outside. I like who I am here. You can be that person anywhere, Calden. Only if I'm with people who make space for it. They reached her car. Street quiet. Sky deepening. She turned to face him. No moves tonight. I wasn't planning any. Good. But may I hold your hand? She hesitated, then slowly offered it. He took it gently, fingers wrapping around hers without pulling, just holding. His thumb brushed hers once. Soft, he said. Still strong, she replied. Always. They stood like that until a car turned the corner and headlights spilled across the sidewalk. She stepped back. Good night, Calden. Good night, Neraya. Neither of them looked back as they walked in opposite directions. They didn't have to. The moment had already done enough. And tomorrow? Tomorrow would be built on this rhythm. No titles, no games, just truth. It wasn't dramatic. There were no press releases, no internal announcements. But people noticed. Calden stopped leading meetings with spreadsheets. He started asking questions he didn't have answers to. Real questions. What's the biggest challenge your team faced this week? Is this process working for you? Who deserves recognition and isn't getting it? People didn't know what to do with that at first. It felt like a trap. But when he asked again and listened, something shifted. In the Monday executive sync, he paused the agenda mid-way through. Before we move on, he said, Neraya, your team did something with the East Side Resource Center last week. She looked up, surprised. Yes. We delivered 47 devices. But the biggest win was we added transportation vouchers for adults with mobility issues. How'd you pull that off? Community barter. A local delivery company volunteered staff in exchange for training credits. Calden turned to the team. That's the kind of strategy we need to pay attention to. Real results. Relationship built. Make sure this gets added to next quarter's community narrative. Not just per. Neraya met his eyes. She didn't smile, but her expression softened. He saw it. Downstairs, people started whispering, not in scandal, in surprise. Calden had walked through the staff kitchen, asked someone their name, and waited for the answer. He told facilities the new lighting was too harsh and requested a walkthrough to improve it. He sat beside a junior manager in a budget review and said, "Talk me through your thinking. I want to understand it the way you do." In her own office, Neraya was hearing it all second-hand. From Maya, from Dina, even Saul from mail services stopped her one morning and said, "Something's different. He ain't all polished steel anymore." Neraya didn't take credit, but she felt it. And part of her, the part that once had to fight to stay grounded, now felt steady, because she wasn't waiting for him to change anymore. She was watching him choose to. But when they did, the space between them was clear, natural. He didn't fill silences. She didn't explain her boundaries. He didn't push. She didn't rush. One Thursday morning, a folder appeared on her desk. Subject, leadership lunch, next-gen strategy proposal inside, a seat at the round table. Not symbolic, strategic. He hadn't asked, just included her. And that meant more, because it wasn't a gesture. It was alignment. Later that day, she passed him in the hallway. He was walking with an investor. He paused, touched her arm lightly. "You got the folder?" "Yes. Hope you'll bring your fire to the table." "I always bring fire." "I know." She kept walking, but inside, something warm stirred. That weekend, she was back at the community hub. Same energy. same teens. But now, the flyers carried the Vaycorp logo again. This time, it wasn't just branding, it was a bridge. A new intern approached her near the end of the session, wide-eyed, nervous. "Miss Lane, can I ask you something?" "Sure. What's it like, working with him?" "With who?" "Mr. Vay. He seems intense." She smiled. "He used to be steel, and now he's learning how to listen." "Did you teach him?" "No." "Then what changed him?" Naraya thought for a moment. 20 people told him what he'd forgotten. "What's that?" "That the strongest leaders don't command respect. They return it." She left early that day. No schedule. No urgency. Just a quiet craving for something more. She walked to Central Brew again and found him already there. Same seat. 2 mugs. One full. One waiting. He looked up when she approached. "You ordered for me? You said chai last time. You remembered." "I'm learning." She sat. Didn't speak for a while. He didn't ask questions. Finally she said, "The shift at work. It's real. You feel it? Everyone does. Is that enough?" "No. What's missing?" She looked at him, straight through him. "Consistency." He nodded slowly. "Then, I'll keep showing up. Don't show up for me. I'm not good." She sipped her drink. He mirrored her. No expectations. No pressure. Just 2 people slowly building something quiet and real. Have you ever watched someone grow? Not because they were forced to, but because they chose to. If you've known a quiet leader who made a real impact, drop their name in the comments. And if this story is speaking to you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. There's more ahead, and it only gets deeper from here. The company's annual winter gala wasn't meant for people like Naraya. It was built for polished appearances, investors, partners, press, floor-length gowns and practiced smiles, polite applause, strategic introductions. She usually skipped it. But this year, the invitation came with a handwritten note clipped to it. "Come as you are. That's more than enough." CV she almost didn't go, but something in her chest whispered, "Show up." So she did. The event was held at the Westmont Hotel's ballroom. Chandeliers sparkled like a sky of frozen stars. Waiters in black vests floated between tables. A jazz trio played near the marble staircase. When she walked in, heads turned, but not for the usual reasons. She wasn't dramatic. She didn't arrive in a high-slit dress or dripping diamonds. She wore a long, deep emerald gown, soft, sleeveless, flowing. Her hair was gathered in a simple updo, small gold hoops in her ears. Nothing loud, but she was radiant, calm, collected, warm. Calden saw her the second she stepped through the entrance. He had been mid-conversation with a city developer, but trailed off the moment his eyes caught hers. Time didn't stop, but something in him did. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. And yet, he couldn't look away. She noticed him watching, didn't flinch, didn't approach. Instead, she walked to the side table where the non-alcoholic drinks were and poured herself sparkling water. Then she found a seat near the wall, out of the spotlight, but fully present, watching, absorbing, always observing. 20 minutes later, Calden approached. No tie, top button, undone, a rare looseness in his step. "You came, didn't say I would, didn't expect you to. But I hoped. You clean up well," she said. "You glow." She looked away, a smile tugging at her lips. "Don't flirt, Calden. I'm not." "Then what are you doing?" "Letting myself admire. That's a fine line. I'll stay on the right side of it." She sipped her drink. "You always say the right thing now." "No," he said, leaning slightly closer. "I say the true thing now." An executive assistant passed by, nodding at Calden. "Speeches start in 10. "Noted," he replied, eyes still on Naraya. "Are you speaking tonight?" she asked. "Briefly. Will it be one of your old scripts?" "No." "Good. Because I didn't come here to hear the man I used to work for. And I didn't come here to be him. She studied him for a moment. You're different in this setting. So are you. Because I've always belonged, she said. You just didn't see it before. He nodded. Now I do. When the lights dimmed and the stage was set, Naraya moved to stand along the wall. She didn't want to be front and center. That wasn't her. But she stayed. Because this time, she wanted to hear what he'd say. Calden stepped up to the podium. No notes, no cards, just presence. We're proud of our growth this year, he began. New projects, expanding markets, strong numbers. But if I'm honest, those aren't the stories that changed us. There's a woman in this room who reminded me of something I forgot. That impact isn't always measurable. That presence isn't always loud. That leadership at its best doesn't ask for applause. It serves. He paused, eyes scanning the crowd. They landed on her. She didn't do it for recognition. She did it because it was right. And 20 people across this company spoke up because they couldn't let her walk away unseen. She changed our culture without ever demanding it. And tonight, I just want to say, thank you, Naraya Lane. Silence. Then slow, real applause. No forced politeness. Real recognition. She didn't step forward. Didn't bow. She stayed exactly where she was. Still. Seen. After the speeches, people approached her, quietly, kindly. Someone from legal said, "Your name came up in our team retreat last month." A junior assistant said, "I want to be like you, measured, solid." A board member placed a hand on her shoulder and simply said, "We see you now." She nodded, gracious, but she didn't stay long. Too much light, too much noise. She stepped outside to the quiet terrace and leaned against the railing, breathing in the cold air. Calden joined her a few minutes later. He didn't say anything, just stood beside her, hands in his pockets. Finally, he asked, "Was that too much?" "It was enough." "You sure?" "Yes. But only because you meant it." "I did." He looked out over the city skyline. "You didn't let me go down easy. Wouldn't have respected you if I had." "And now?" She turned to face him. "Now, I'm not sure what I feel. Can I ask you something?" "Go ahead. Can I take you home?" "As your employee?" "No. As what then?" "As the man who's slowly learning how to deserve the space you've let him share." She didn't answer, just reached for his hand. He walked her up to her door. Didn't assume, didn't ask, but he waited. Not because he had expectations, because something in him didn't want to leave yet. Naraya glanced at her keys, then at him. "Would you like some tea?" Calden's lips parted in surprise. "Yeah, I would." Her place was quiet, warm, bookshelves near the window, a soft grey couch, candles on the mantel, only one lit. She poured him tea, mint with honey. They sat without music, without TV, just the small flame between them. Just them. She kicked off her shoes, pulled her knees up to the couch, looked at him like she wasn't sure how to start. "I didn't expect you to ask. I didn't expect you to say yes. So what happens now? We stop pretending we're not in this." She didn't blink. "What is this to you, Calden?" He leaned forward. "This is something I want to protect." "From what?" "From the version of me that used to ruin things." She tilted her head. "You don't need to protect it from that. You've already buried him." He let out a breath. "Then maybe now I protect you from the silence I used to hide in." Her gaze dropped for a second, then rose again. "You're not hiding now. Neither are you." She moved closer, knees touching. Their hands found each other without instruction, fingers curling, skin warm, no rush, no pull, just closeness. He reached up, brushing her cheek. She didn't flinch, didn't move. Her eyes searched his. He whispered, "You're so beautiful, it makes it hard to breathe." Her hand pressed gently to his chest. "Then breathe with me." Their kiss wasn't loud, it wasn't wild. It was deep, quiet, like the exhale of two people who had waited long enough. He didn't move fast. He didn't lead hard. Every motion was careful. Every look was permission. When she leaned into him and whispered, "Stay," it wasn't an invitation for a night. It was a trust fall, and he caught her. They stood. She led him to her bedroom. Still no music. Still no lights. Just one candle. Just her, him, and the sound of breath. He took his time, unbuttoned her dress like he was unwrapping something sacred. She guided him with quiet nods, soft touches. No performance, no script, just real closeness. He kissed her collarbone. She pulled him closer. He licked just beneath her navel. She gasped and whispered his name. He pressed his lips lower. She stopped him gently. "Wait." He paused, looked up. "Everything okay?" She nodded. "Yes. I want to see you, not just feel you." He sat back, eyes soft. "Then look at me. I'm here." She took control, guided his hand to where she needed it, let herself show what she liked, told him when it was too much, too little, just right. He listened, not to perform, to connect. When she climbed on top of him, he let her, hands on her hips, no rush. When she bent down and kissed him again, slower this time, he whispered, "Don't stop." She didn't, not until they both reached that quiet, breathless stillness that came with nothing left to prove. They lay in the warmth afterward, skin to skin, legs tangled, still no words, until she whispered, "I haven't let anyone that close in years." He kissed her shoulder. "Neither have I. But you've been with people. Physically, yes. Emotionally, no. So why now? Because you didn't ask me to be perfect. You asked me to be honest." She smiled in the dark. "Honesty's harder, but better, always." He stayed the night. No alarms, no shoes near the door. Just two people, breathing easy. And when the sun crept in through her curtains, she rolled into his chest. Eyes closed. Voice low. "We're not rushing this, no. And we're not pretending this doesn't change things. Never." "Then stay." I already did. The week after the gala moved like a current beneath still water. Neither of them posted. No announcements, no captions, no clarifications, but others did. Clips from the night surfaced online, photos of Calden and Neraya standing side by side under the chandeliers, him whispering something in her ear, her hand resting lightly on his arm. The internet took notice. This is a different Calden Vale. Did he just show up with the woman who exposed his crisis system's blind spots? She said no, and he still wanted her. Maybe the first real win we've seen in months. But Calden didn't engage. Neither did Neraya. They returned to their work quietly. He showed up to her office once. No cameras, no press, just brought lunch. She came to his building later that week, sat with his team during a crisis mapping session, offered thoughts, and left before anyone could ask for a quote. Their names trended together for 3 days straight. But inside, it was quiet. They texted often, called at night, slept in the same bed twice more, still slow, still private. No one asked if they were official. They weren't performing. They were just steady. And for Neraya, steady felt like breathing after holding it in too long. Until one email cracked the rhythm. It was forwarded from a producer, then another, and another. Documentary requests, panel invites, speaking engagements. Suddenly, people wanted her to talk, not just about her work, but about him, about them, about how it all happened. She said no to everything, except one. It was a keynote request for a private conference on crisis psychology in DC. The invitation came from a black woman who'd followed her writing for years. No press, no recordings, just a room full of professionals. It felt safe. She said yes. She didn't tell Calden until 2 days before. He didn't flinch. "You're doing it?" "Yes." "You want me to come?" "No." He paused, nodded once. "Got it." Later that night, he asked gently, "You sure you don't want me there?" She leaned into his chest. I want to do this for me, not as your girlfriend, not as your, whatever the world thinks I am, just me. He kissed the side of her head. Then I'll be right here when you come back. The speech was 37 minutes long. She didn't use slides. She didn't quote studies. She talked about silence, about the trauma of not being heard, about the cost of emotional labor in broken systems. She never named Calden, but she did say this: we can't change what we won't admit, and we can't heal what we keep hiding. I didn't fall in love with reform. I fell in love with truth, and it almost broke me. She paused, then added softly, but sometimes, what almost breaks you is the exact thing that sets you free. The room went quiet. She left without staying for applause, flew home the next morning. By the time she landed, someone had leaked a partial transcript. Clips hit Twitter by evening. She said it, with her whole chest. The man she exposed still pursued her. We're living in a new era. She didn't ask for a stage. She built one anyway, but none of that mattered to her. She was back home, shoes off, bag on the floor, and a message on her phone. From Calden, dinner's at your door. No pressure. I'll call you tomorrow. She opened the bag. Salmon, rice, broccolini, her favorite ginger dressing. She smiled, then sat on her couch, and for the first time in weeks let herself cry. Not from pain, from release. Naraya didn't post anything after the keynote. No behind-the-scenes photos, no reposted stories, no quotes pulled from her speech. But others did. Within 48 hours, clips of her talk were everywhere. She walked out without yelling. That's power, her robe, her silence, her story. Peace isn't a performance, it's a promise. It went viral. By Monday morning, blogs were writing think pieces. How Naria Langston became the voice of soft rebellion. What we all missed while watching her marriage collapse. She didn't just leave him. She left the story we wrote for her. It should have felt validating, but Naria wasn't celebrating, because once again she had become a spectacle, a symbol, a narrative for others to sell. She didn't regret speaking. She just hated being consumed. At the office, her co-workers were kind, too kind. They walked on eggshells. One of the interns asked if she was accepting speaking engagements now. Another called her an icon in passing. Calden didn't call that night. He texted once, "Proud of you." She replied, "Thank you." He didn't follow up. That silence felt heavier than any headline. By midweek, she finally sent a message. "Naria, I miss your voice." His call came 2 minutes later. No small talk. "Just come over." She went. No makeup, no heels, just sweats and a jacket. He opened the door and stepped aside. She walked in and stood there. He shut the door. They didn't touch. Not yet. He stared at her like he'd been holding his breath. She dropped her bag and whispered, "Talk to me." He exhaled. "Everyone wants a piece of you. I know. I don't want to be another one of them." "You're not." He shook his head. "But I'm in this story too, even if I don't speak." She stepped closer. "Do you want to be?" He nodded once, "Yes. But not as the man who saved you, not as a footnote to your fight. I want to be the one you trust when no one's watching." She closed the space between them. "I already do." And that night, they didn't do anything complicated. They sat on the couch, ate leftovers, and watched nothing in particular. He held her legs across his lap. She leaned against him. At some point, her phone buzzed again. Another invitation, this one from a streaming platform. She turned it face down. He saw it. Didn't ask. She said quietly, "I don't want to be anyone's inspiration. I just want to live." He nodded. "Then let's start with that." And maybe it wasn't glamorous, but the quiet mattered more than the noise. Because what they were building wasn't for the public. It was for themselves. It was Sunday, and for once, Naraya wasn't rushing anywhere. No conference calls, no brand meetings, no lawyer check-ins. She was barefoot in Calden's kitchen, hair messy, face bare, wearing one of his old shirts and nothing else. He moved around her like he'd done it for years, boiling water, cracking eggs, watching her lean on the counter and smile like this piece wasn't borrowed. He glanced over. "You always this quiet in the morning?" She shrugged, sipping from her mug. "Only when I don't want the moment to end." He walked over, kissed her forehead and said, "Then we won't let it." There was no big declaration, no orchestral music behind their slow breakfast. But Naria felt something she hadn't in years. Safe. It wasn't that the world had disappeared. It hadn't. The noise was still there. Texts, emails, notifications, opportunities. But here, in this space, it didn't matter. Calden reached for her hand. "You're glowing." She rolled her eyes. "I haven't showered." "Exactly." He grinned. "That's the version of you I want. The one who's not performing for anyone. Not even me." She looked up at him, that smile softening. "Then that's the one you'll keep seeing." They ate on the floor, because they could, and talked like people who had time. He asked about her first job. She asked about his last heartbreak. He admitted he never wanted the spotlight, but "I want to be beside the woman who has it. If she'll let me." She asked him why. His answer was simple. "Because your voice helps people breathe." Naria stared at him for a long moment, then whispered, "You help me breathe." And just like that, she kissed him. No build-up, no question. A kiss without makeup, without timing. It didn't ask for permission. It just was. Later that day, she pulled out her phone, looked at the next wave of requests, speaking engagements, interviews, endorsements, a book deal. Calden watched her face shift. "You don't have to be everything for everyone," he said. She nodded. "I know. But I want to use this moment wisely. Then start by asking what you want, not what the world expects." She sat with that, and hours later, she wrote one post. Not a press release, not a TED Talk, just a note on a black background. "I'm not a brand. I'm a person, healing, learning, living. Thank you for respecting that." Then she turned her phone off. That night, they lay in bed. He wrapped himself around her, hand resting at her waist. She whispered, "I think I'm ready." "For what?" "To start again." Slowly, he kissed her shoulder. Then, "That's how we'll begin." The next morning, sunlight warmed the sheets. Naria woke first. Calden was still asleep, one arm across her waist, his breath steady on her neck. She didn't move, not out of fear, but because she wanted to remember this exact stillness, this peace, this version of herself. No pressure to be perfect, no voice whispering she had to prove something. Just her, here, wanted, whole. When Calden stirred, he didn't say anything. He just kissed the back of her neck, then whispered, "Good morning, woman. I'm falling hard for." She smiled. "You're not even going to play it cool." He laughed into her skin. "Nope, I'm past pretending." They stayed like that until hunger pushed them out of bed. But even in the kitchen, Naria was different. She didn't reach for her phone. She didn't check her calendar. She didn't ask what time it was. Instead, she leaned against the counter, and when Calden slid a plate toward her, she grabbed his wrist. "Thank you," she said. "For what?" "For showing me this is possible, that I can be soft and strong, loud and quiet, seen and still safe." He nodded, his voice low. "You don't have to trade one for the other." A few hours later, they took a walk, just around the block, no disguises, no guards. They didn't speak much. But Calden reached for her hand, and when Naria didn't let go, it meant something. And the people they passed noticed. Some whispered, some stared, but Naria didn't flinch. That night, Calden made a small fire outside on the deck. They wrapped themselves in a blanket, sipped wine, and stared at the stars. "I think I want to say yes," she murmured. "To what?" "To some of it. Not all. Just the things that align." "Your pace," he said. She nodded. "My pace." She turned to him, her tone softer now. "But I want you there. When I write the next thing, when I stand again, I want to know you're somewhere close." "You don't have to ask," he said. "I do." she whispered. Because I never asked anyone for anything. Not really. And I want this to be different. He held her gaze. Then yes, I'll be there. In the back if I have to. Just say the word. That night, they made love. Not the kind that was rushed or loud, but the kind that knew the difference between being taken and being held. The kind that said, I see you in every touch. And afterward, when Naria lay against his chest, she whispered, I didn't think I'd feel safe again, but you make it easy. He pulled her tighter. You're not alone in this anymore. They fell asleep like that, and for the first time in a long time, she didn't wake up with panic. She woke up with peace. The audience was already seated. The lights dimmed, and Naria stood backstage, breathing in slowly through her nose, then out her mouth. It had been 7 months. 7 months since the day the boardroom turned cold. 7 months since her voice cracked on that elevator ride down. 7 months since 20 people stood and walked out with her. Now she stood taller. No makeup team, no dramatic intro, just her name on the screen. Naria Malone, speaker. She had written every word herself. She didn't ask anyone to soften the message or trim the truth. But she also didn't write it to fight back. She wrote it to let go. When the stage manager nodded, Naria stepped out into the soft spotlight. She didn't rush. She walked like a woman who had nothing to prove, only something to share. The applause rose as she reached the center. She adjusted the mic, looked out into the crowd, and began. I used to think strength meant silence, holding it in, never flinching, always smiling. A few heads nodded. She continued. But silence can turn into a cage, and some of us are still healing from stories we were never allowed to tell. Cameras didn't flash. Phones didn't go up. People listened. Real listening. Leaning forward. No distractions. I worked in a boardroom where being right wasn't enough, where being quiet was expected, and where being the only woman at the table meant smiling through dismissals. She paused. But that's not the story I want to center. There was a shift in the room. Curiosity. I want to talk about the 20 people who stood up that day, who said, if she's not safe here, we're not staying either. That's power. That's leadership. That's legacy. The applause came gently. No clapping for noise. Just recognition. Sometimes the turning point isn't when someone pushes you out. It's when others refuse to let you fall. Her voice never cracked. Her hands didn't shake. I'm not bitter. I'm not here to shame anyone. I'm here because I survived that day with my voice intact. And if you've ever been pushed out, mocked, underestimated, I want you to know. You're still allowed to rise. Her eyes flicked toward the front row for a second. Calden sat there, quiet, hands clasped, eyes soft. She didn't need his approval. But his presence meant something. She turned back to the crowd. Sometimes all it takes is one person to believe in you again, but don't wait for that. You're already enough. She closed the talk with a simple sentence. I used to survive rooms that didn't want me. Now, I build rooms where we all belong. The applause shook the room. Not because of who she had been, but because of who she chose to become. As she stepped off stage, someone handed her a bottle of water. Another assistant whispered, "You're trending already." But Naria didn't check her phone. She walked through the side exit and found Calden waiting in the hallway. He didn't speak. He just wrapped his arms around her, held her close and whispered, "You did it." "I didn't need them to clap," she said against his chest. "I know," he said, "but they needed to hear it." She smiled. "Now what?" he asked. She pulled back, took his hand and said, "Now I live." They didn't rush out of the venue. Calden held Naria's hand loosely as they walked toward the elevator. Their pace was unhurried. No cameras followed, no press. Just the echo of their footsteps and the stillness that comes after a storm has truly passed. In the car, neither of them spoke for several minutes. The silence wasn't heavy. It was peaceful. He glanced over at her, the soft light from the dashboard highlighting the calm in her eyes. "Hungry?" he asked. She nodded. "Starving." They didn't go anywhere fancy. They found a small, quiet diner near her apartment. Vinyl booths, black coffee, a waitress who didn't recognize them or care who they were. Naraya ordered pancakes. Calden got eggs and toast. No pretenses, no performance. She picked up her fork, then paused. "I don't want to talk about the past tonight," she said softly. "You don't have to," he said. She took a bite, then smiled. "I'm proud of myself." He reached across the table, brushing his thumb over her knuckles. "You should be." They stayed there for over an hour, laughing quietly, sharing food, talking about small things, the upcoming weather, her favorite childhood cartoons, the way he hated mushrooms but never said anything when she cooked with them. When he drove her home later that night, he didn't walk her to the door. He parked, turned off the ignition. "I want you to rest," he said gently. "Not replay today 100 times in your head." She smiled. "You know me well." "I'd like to," he said. Her smile deepened. "Come in," she said after a beat. "Not for anything heavy, just for presence." He nodded. They didn't touch when they got inside. Not at first. She kicked off her shoes, poured 2 glasses of water, and handed him one. He looked around her apartment. Warm lighting, scattered books, soft blankets. Lived in. Real. "You okay?" she asked. "I am," he said, "but I keep thinking about how close I came to losing you entirely." "You didn't," she said, "but you came close." He accepted that. No defense, no excuses. They sat on her couch, their bodies turned toward each other. "I never told you why I couldn't defend you in that meeting," he said quietly. "I don't want to know," she said. "Not now. Not tonight." He respected that. Instead, he leaned closer. She didn't move away. He kissed her hand, then her cheek, then her lips. Soft, slow, reverent. No urgency. No need to fix or explain. Just presence. When they woke the next morning, they were still clothed, still wrapped in each other's arms. She stirred first, blinking against the light. He was already watching her, one hand stroking gently along her arm. "You stayed," she murmured. "I meant it when I said I would," he replied. She nodded, resting her head on his chest again. "I don't know where this is going," she whispered. "Me neither," he said, "but I'm here for it. All of it." For the first time in a long time, she believed him, because he didn't say it to earn her back. He said it to walk with her forward, and for Naraya, that was enough. If you felt something while watching this, if you've ever been pushed out, underestimated, or made to doubt your own voice, know this: you still matter. You are still becoming. You are not behind. And love, real love, shows up quietly, consistently, without needing to be perfect. Share this story with someone who's been through hard rooms and found the strength to rise again. Leave a comment. Tell us which moment touched you most. And don't forget to like and subscribe to Mr. Charles' Stories. Here, we tell stories that remind you healing is possible and love is still safe. See you in the next story.